Hello everyone, and especially the Steamians from steamit.com. This is Colonel. I'll be doing a little presentation on an infographic related to unity consciousness. If you're familiar with my work, you might have seen this one dropped in a few places related to this information, but I'll be describing it in more detail. First, I'll start off with what unity is. It's a major drive psychologically to unite with others, to form relationships and work together cooperatively towards preferably a common goal. So you have to unite if you want to go somewhere with someone together. Because if you're not united, you're disunited, disharmonious, misaligned, disintegrated, and contradictory and conflicting with others, then you can't go forward. And that's the importance of truth and reality, so that we can get on the same page and go forward together. And those that are attached to falsity and don't want to honestly self-evaluate or change their behavior are a problem going forward. So to get unity of people together, it requires each individual to be an honest self-evaluator and self-analysis and reflection and contemplation, so that we can be in unity consciousness within ourselves. Because if you're in contradiction with yourself, then you're not aligned with yourself, you're not united, you're not one with yourself. Your thoughts, emotions, and actions are not united. So you're in internal contradictions. How can you expect to properly unite with others when you yourself are not properly united? Well, I guess I'll just continue with the definition. So unity is a state or property of being one. That's basically what it means, because it comes from the Latin unus, which means one. And that's what it is when everything is united, it forms a cohesive, integrated, harmonious unity. That's what the word is. So if there's parts that don't fit, they're not united. They're not a part of that unity. When we're talking about consciousness, we have our thoughts, emotions, and actions are not conflicting when they're in unity consciousness. As we think, so we feel, and so we do. Our actions do not betray our words, thoughts, or feelings. So that's when you have your thoughts, emotions, and actions, they're all aligned. It's all check marks across the board, and then you're in unity consciousness. But if you have one that contradicts the other, then it's not unity consciousness. And you have a disunity, disharmony, opposition, conflict, non-integrated, disharmonious, disequilibrated. So before I'll continue, I'll just mention the importance of reality again and truth. Because when you're disconnected from reality and you're not integrated, you're conflicting with what is in reality, you're oppositional to it, not integrated with it, you're disunited from it, then you're not going to understand things properly, and your actions are not going to be as optimal as they could be. Because if you think 2 plus 2 is 5, and then you develop further mathematical derivations about reality based on that, well, they're going to be off course. They're going to be off the path as soon as you take the wrong step. So that's why the first step is important, and each successive step is important to stay on the path of reality and truth. We can always correct ourselves, but the more we ignore going off the wrong path, the more we keep going on the wrong path. So we have to face the negative, face the wrong, and face ourselves and admit wrong. Admit wrong, and then we can imagine better. But if we don't admit what's wrong, we're not going to be going forward in a positive direction. And yes, you can see how this relates to the Steamit community and the issues we have there. And this applies to everything in life. It's just applying right now to one issue, and it could apply to many aspects of your life, because this is about life. It's about consciousness and how it functions. So if you have your thoughts and emotions, you you think a certain way and you feel a certain way, but then you're afraid to act, or you don't act even though you know you should act. Well, that's disunity consciousness. You're not united within. You think one way, you feel another, the same way, so you're like, yeah, that's what I got to do, but then you don't do it. So either the willpower is not there, or instead of having courage to engage in the willpower, what you end up having is cowardice instead of courage. And that's based in fear. Instead of the courage, like the lion and the Wizard of Oz, courage, he needed a heart to have courage, and the heart and care. So if you have care for truth, you'll have the courage to do what is required to act and support truth. But if you don't have the courage and you're acting cowardly, that's because you have fear of truth. You're afraid of facing things, afraid of doing something about it. And similarly, if we only have our thoughts, if we think something, but then we feel differently about it, and then we act differently than what we think, well, we're still not united. And also, if we think in a wrong way, but feel in the right way, and then we act in the wrong way, we're still not united. So the point is to always be, it starts in our thoughts, and we feel certain ways about how we think and what happens in our environment that affects us, that we think about, and we have emotional meaning applied, and we have a feeling, and then we can act upon that. So depending on how united we are within, it's going to affect our actions in the world. So I'll describe the image of consciousness, the Trinity here. So the green is is between the red and the blue in the light spectrum. So that's the middle point, so symbolically represents unity. So when we're united, we're in the Trinity, in that triangle. And that triangle is composed of, one side is the blue, and the other side is the red, and when we unite them together, we get the green. So the blue is the internal aspects, the unseen, the quote, spirit, right? Because it's unseen, it's immaterial, that's consciousness, so it's internal. Our thoughts and emotions are internal, they're unseen. That's the symbolism for the quote spirit and the quote soul. That's consciousness, the psyche, the quote breath. This is all in etymology. If you go look into it, you can find this all. And when we unite those capacities together, then we can act in unison, and the actions are our external, and they are seen expressions of our consciousness from the internal. So our internal thoughts and emotions lead to our external actions. And those actions in turn can feedback and create more stimulus in reality that then we receive, and it's a potential stimulus back for us. So we do something, and then someone else can do something, and then that is received by us in our consciousness that we then process with thoughts and emotions, and then we output again. And this is how reality functions. It's a continual feedback of what we put out and what we receive. Very reciprocal. I'm not saying it's a one-to-one, but it's reciprocal. We output and we input. We output and we input. And internally, you can represent the thoughts as the quote mind, and emotions as the quote heart. These are symbolic representations of aspects and qualities of consciousness. But it's all consciousness. It's not the literal heart. It's not the literal brain that is your consciousness. The consciousness is an emergent phenomenon. The functionality comes from certain areas of the brain, but as a whole, it's not your brain that is consciousness. It's the brain that produces consciousness. Consciousness is an emergence of the bioelectrochemical processing of the brain. So the mind and heart gives us our guts, the guts to do things, the courage and willpower to act. And it can also be looked at as the mind is intelligence and the heart is care. So with our intelligence and care, then we become truly intelligent, and we have the courage and the willpower to act according to how we think and how we feel. And just because you're united in consciousness that you think and feel a certain way, then you act, it doesn't mean you're doing good or you're doing bad. Because people can think to do evil, love doing evil, and then they do evil. So just because you're united, it's not being united with reality, but this is just the first step, that you need to be united within yourself in how you process things within yourself, so that then you can honestly evaluate reality, since you're honestly evaluating yourself. So self-knowledge is definitely required in order to progress in a greater understanding of how everything works in reality, how we cooperate together and live together, and many aspects of our behavior and the conduct and how we affect others. It's a complex issue, but the more you think about it, the more you get into it, the more you can uncover an understanding of these complex dynamics that we go through in our lives, and intuitively and automatically learning what to do and what not to do in our social situations. But we can become more consciously aware of how this functions, and actively direct how we're going to behave, rather than more passively and intuitively respond to things. We have more of an active awareness of what is happening and what is processing within us to stimulate responses. Sometimes we react, we don't think before acting, and we just react. So gaining control of an understanding of these processes within us, the self-knowledge, so that we can then better control ourselves, is part of this path towards. So there's self-knowledge, self-betterment, self-control, self-governance, self-mastery, enlightenment. These are all words to refer to the improvement of ourselves by understanding ourselves. And I'm not just talking about our individual personal lives and our, what I call the ego personality identity construct of who we individually are. That's a part of it, ourselves, our unique experiences from the time we're born to the time we die. It's all unique to us. But I'm talking about knowing ourselves as human consciousness, because we are all human consciousness, and we all have this emergence of consciousness, and it can vary, and there's people who can have congenital defects and brain defects, and they're born with problems in the brain, and then their consciousness is, quote, retarded, mentally challenged. So, but we all have this emergence of consciousness, and it requires a properly functioning brain. And if you damage your brain, such as people who engage in boxing and other contact events, well, you can damage your ability for your consciousness to process information and to be self-aware. The brain is a very unique aspect of reality. It's the most complex organic creation in nature. There's nothing more complex than the brain. It's an amazing thing we have, and we aren't, as a whole, developing it enough especially into self-knowledge, to understanding ourselves so that we can better understand reality. A lot of the intellectuals in academia go into, the sciences and trying to understand reality, but they're not doing the deeper philosophical and psychological understanding and breaking through the conditioning of our society. And even psychologists are stuck in the conditioning of society and don't see things as accurately as they are, and even philosophers. It takes a lot of time to break through these barriers of self-knowledge that prevent us from recognizing things as they are. And unity consciousness is one of the first places to start to understand how we ourselves are preventing ourselves from moving forward. As I've said in many posts, we are our own worst enemies. We fool ourselves and we lie to ourselves the most easily, which allows us to lie to others easily afterwards. I guess that's it, and I'll just leave it there. Thank you very much. Have a good day.